You won't believe what went down in this courtroom. A young man walked in smiling, acting like he could charm his way out of serious charges, but things went completely the opposite way. He was facing 2 counts of armed robbery, and the judge wasn't having it. Despite his family writing letters calling him a good kid, and his lawyers arguing he came from a tough background, no father figure, some drug use, hoping for probation, the courtroom made it clear that attitude and excuses wouldn't save him. Smiling in court while holding a loaded gun? That wasn't going to fly. The judge went all out when it was revealed that the gun he pointed at a victim's head was fully loaded. Reports confirmed a loaded Glock under his seat, and the courtroom erupted as the judge tore into the defendant for lying. This wasn't just about a weapon, it was about the terror he caused. Victims, including a young child who saw the robbery firsthand, were left traumatized, and the judge made sure the defendant truly understood the seriousness of his actions. Even with the defense pleading for leniency, citing a troubled upbringing, the judge reminded everyone that violent crimes have real consequences. Smugness, charm, or personal hardship couldn't erase the fact that this defendant endangered lives and caused lasting fear. In the end, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison on each count, running concurrently under a plea agreement. That means he could be out before turning 30, but this sentence sends a clear message. Armed robbery with a loaded gun is a serious crime, and no amount of excuses will let someone slide. This case is a stark reminder. The courtroom doesn't care about smiles, letters, or excuses. Actions have consequences, and this young man is about to face the reality of his choices.
This is about accountability about what happened that day, right? You took that man's stuff and you went to try and take money from his debit card. You remember that?
Yes.
And it failed, right?
Yes.
And then you saw this 22-year-old lady, Miss Brooks, with her mother. You knocked her to the ground and you tried the same offense again, right?
She wasn't with her mother, but yes.
Still a 22-year-old lady, still somebody that you knocked to the ground, put a gun to her head, did the same thing again, right?
Right.
And whenever all that takes place and the officers finally get going, their reports, which your lawyers had access to, and I'm assuming you've had an opportunity to review, say that you were going over 100 miles an hour in an effort to evade them, right?
I don't remember that as much long.
Definitely well in excess of the speed limit, correct? You're doing everything you could to get away from, right? Just like today, you're doing everything you can to try to make sure you get probation, as opposed to, I'm going to ask this judge to give you 15 years, right?
The parties have rested the presentation of evidence. The court has the pre-sentence report that has been submitted by the probation office and admitted without objections. Arguments by the parties. What are you asking for, please? State.
Judge, I think you know it's clear that I'm asking for the 15 years.
There's no argument, Your Honor, in reference to what he did to 2 innocent people or 2 innocent families. What you see in the PSI report, though, is that there really isn't any criminal conduct after or before or after that in reference to the legal system. You have marijuana use in the U.S. Army, but wait a couple of years and probably marijuana use is going to be illegal in most states. But he was discharged not honorably. So what do you do with a kid that doesn't know? And what we tried to do today is to try to present a little bit, and I don't know whether it's a cleaned up version or not, but basically he grew up by himself. Mom seems like a decent person, but mom had to be able to support herself and all her life. He's had no dad, no one, not even financial support in reference to him. We realized through the questioning of the state that he had some abuse problems in Maryland from family members who took advantage of him. And then in the middle of all this was ripped from whatever persons that he had some type of relationship in his senior year in high school and sent to the outskirts of Chicago. even now, when he talks to the probation officer preparing the report, I think he was forthright in when he started marijuana, the synthetic marijuana, which is one time, which he says was at the date of the incident. But also what he was going through in reference to depression, anxiety, psychological and emotional, and asked, and which was probably one of the few times that I've seen, expressed a need for treatment for these conditions. You could put him on deferred, and he's looking at life. You can put him on deferred for one, find him for robbery on the other, send him because of maybe what he's done in county jail, and I could then file for shock probation if he corrected himself, if it was robbery, and keep him on the hook after that in reference to probation. We've got people, the pastor here, Pastor Matthews, and conditions, and as this court knows, the problem is I guess a lack of parental, but then it's also the lack of young people today not knowing what a gun and everything else gets you in the road that it goes down. We're asking the court, if it's not deferred probation, that you would consider deferred and something with a lesser included. You give them a taste of TDC and maybe a ride on a bus to Huntsville for a little bit of time to know what it's really like when you commit an offense that's going to, I guess, affect you the rest of your life. And then see, hopefully, if he does follow the rules and regulations there, that he's given that second chance and put back on under your supervision, and also with the help of his family and his church.
Finds most compelling is that in the commission of this crime, it's already been pointed out that you assaulted two people, and both of them were threatened and in fear of their life by you, who has no authority to do that. You don't take God's will into your hands. And when you have a loaded firearm, and it was loaded, wasn't it?
No, sir, it was loaded.
I'm sorry. What did you just say to me?
It was loaded, Your Honor.
Sir?
It was not loaded, Your Honor.
You're looking at me and I'm about to sentence you and make a decision, and you just told me it was not loaded? All right, let me read the report to you. Maybe you just screwed up. Because, sir, this is your life. Underneath the Charger's driver's seat, you were in a Charger, right?
It's John.
On the floorboard in plain view was a dark brown Glock with a laser attachment, just like the lady said, underneath the barrel. The Glock had one magazine inside with 10 9mm rounds. Shame on you to look me in the eye and just bold-faced try to fool me? Is that what this all is? A charade?
But no, Your Honor. It's not.
You assaulted a woman, didn't have to. You assaulted a woman, had a loaded gun. What are you bringing a loaded gun to robberies for? Unless you intend to use it, sir. And then the man in front of his children, his little children, and the 1-year-old may not ever remember, but the 4-year-old, I remember when I was 4, certain occasions that were traumatic. We all do. You're the source of that horror for that child. Plus, again, you have a gun, and they really didn't know it was loaded, but when you point a gun at somebody and threaten them, they're going to assume their life is a clock's tick away. You have the power, which our Creator doesn't give you. You forced it on fellow humans, God's creatures. As we want to bring this up, how religious. You've been going to church for a long time, but yet you are here by a cacophony, a product of bad choices that defy your education in high school, that defy your upbringing and church going. that defy military. All of those are methods of helping people to make the best choices they can make. And after all of that, you put multiple people in harm's way. And it's certainly doesn't go without notice that the victims in this case want to see the justice, one of them at least has expressed, you need imprisonment. I haven't heard of really a thing in your from this evidence here that isn't seen in so many people generally. I mean, nobody's got a perfect upbringing. It seems there are a lot of people whose parents, one or the other, or both sometimes, are irresponsible, but yet they seem to do all right. They seem to follow moral lessons. And your family here, look at all these letters. They seem to be good guiding lights, but they don't know really the truth of your long-lasting decision to use drugs. A third of your life has been drug usage, a third. And they have never seen the Mr. Hyde side of your Dr. Jekyll. I know him to be a kind, loving, and intelligent young man, but you were almost a daily drug user that certainly tricked the people living in your house. They didn't know about it. And then to the probation office, you said you blamed your actions on smoking cannabis and synthetic marijuana. Your actions are based on poor choices. Drugs are out there. They're always out there. There's always a temptation on the dark side, but it's always good versus evil. But you were brought up in knowing the differences and choosing good versus evil.
He walked into the courtroom with a smile on his face, a look that said he thought he could charm his way out of serious trouble. But nothing could have been further from the truth. This wasn't a casual hearing or a minor infraction. He was facing 2 counts of armed robbery, crimes that involved real victims, real fear, and a loaded gun. And the judge was ready to make it clear that the law does not excuse arrogance or disrespect. From the start, his family tried to defend him. They wrote letters calling him a good kid, hoping to show that beneath the charges, he had character and potential. His lawyers echoed this sentiment, describing him as a product of a difficult upbringing, a young man who had grown up without a father figure and had faced challenges with drugs and poor influences. They asked for leniency, suggesting that probation might give him a chance to turn his life around. But the courtroom quickly demonstrated that reality doesn't bend for excuses. Smiling in court, knowing the severity of his crimes, only made him appear arrogant. The truth about the gun changed everything. This was not a toy, not unloaded, not harmless. Reports confirmed that a loaded Glock was found under his seat, the same weapon he had used to threaten a victim. The judge's reaction was fierce. He called out the defendant for lying, for attempting to downplay the danger he had posed. This wasn't just about breaking the law, it was about the terror he had inflicted on innocent people. The victims in this case were more than just names in a report. Some had witnessed the crime firsthand, experiencing fear and trauma that would not simply disappear. Among them was a young child, forced to watch as a robbery unfolded in front of their eyes, a moment that would stay with them for years. The judge emphasized the lasting impact of these actions, making it clear that the defendant's behavior had consequences far beyond the courtroom. Even as the defense highlighted his troubled upbringing and personal struggles, the judge reminded everyone that background cannot erase the harm caused. Being a product of circumstance does not excuse terrorizing others. Smugness, charm, and excuses do not change the law or the reality of the suffering he created. Throughout the hearing, the judge meticulously reviewed the facts. He highlighted the violent nature of the crimes, the deliberate actions, and the lack of remorse displayed by the defendant. The court records showed that he had aimed a loaded firearm at a victim's head, an act that could have ended in disaster at any moment. The gravity of this was not lost on the judge, who addressed the defendant directly, making sure he understood the full weight of his choices. The sentencing itself reflected this seriousness. He was given 15 years on each count, running concurrently. This sentence was part of a plea agreement, meaning he could potentially be released before turning 30, but it was clear that this was a life-altering consequence. The judge's decision sent a strong message. Armed robbery, especially involving a loaded weapon and direct threats to others, carries severe punishment. Throughout the hearing, the courtroom witnessed more than just legal arguments. It saw the clash between youthful arrogance and the harsh realities of crime and punishment. The defendant's smiles and attempts to minimize his actions were met with stern rebukes and reminders that actions have consequences. The courtroom became a place of accountability, not charm, not persuasion, and not excuses. This case also serves as a sobering reminder about the ripple effect of crime. Victims, witnesses, and communities all feel the impact of violent actions. The judge's remarks about the trauma inflicted on victims, especially the child who witnessed the robbery, underscored that crime leaves lasting scars that go far beyond the immediate moment. Justice in this case meant addressing that trauma and sending a clear warning to others who might think similarly reckless actions could go unpunished. Even as lawyers argued for leniency and highlighted personal struggles, the judge remained firm. The law requires accountability, and this hearing showcased how seriously the justice system treats armed robbery and violent crime. Letters of character, stories of hardship, and appeals to empathy cannot erase the terror experienced by victims or the deliberate nature of the crimes committed. In the end, the young man left the courtroom not with the smile he had walked in with, but with the reality of a lengthy prison sentence and the knowledge that his actions had consequences he could not escape. This was not just a punishment, it was a clear and public reminder of the seriousness of armed robbery, the dangers of firearms, and the responsibility each individual has for their choices. For everyone watching, this case is a warning and a lesson. Charm, excuses, and personal struggles may be part of life, but they do not shield anyone from the consequences of violent crime. Actions have repercussions, and the courtroom is where accountability is enforced. Smiles and apologies may not erase fear, trauma, or wrongdoing, and this case proves that the law takes the safety and well-being of victims seriously. The courtroom drama here was more than legal procedure. It was a story about choices, consequences, and justice. It reminds us that while the defense may attempt to frame individuals as products of circumstance, there is a limit. When those circumstances translate into violence and terror for others, the law steps in to protect and to hold individuals accountable. Ultimately, this young man's case demonstrates the balance the justice system seeks. Consideration of personal background, but unwavering attention to the impact of actions. Victims deserve protection, communities deserve safety, and justice demands that those who commit violent acts face the consequences. This story is a stark reminder that actions, especially violent ones, are never without repercussions, and that the law exists to ensure accountability, even when individuals fail to recognize the seriousnness of their own behavior.
Doesn't cause you to have made a mistake and fix it immediately. Do right from wrong. I watched his grandmother help raise him in the church and instilled in him the love of God by taking him to church on a regular basis. He possesses compassion and love for others. The police reports of these two cases don't say that. You made horrendous choices, and in choices, bad choices, you have to pay for the consequences. Good choices, you get to enjoy success and celebrate. But here, this is no time for celebration, because I see a life of poor choices that has been wasted up to now, for the most part. What I hear is now what's changed is you don't like being incarcerated, which is a smart move, because unless you're sociopathic, I don't know who would. But these are violent crimes. You're looking at life imprisonment on each one, sir. And they're two separate crimes. So those could be added one to another under law, because you can't package a deal when you commit multiple crimes. You don't pay for less. Each bad choice or crime has its individual consequences, because there are individual acts of individual victims. Here, your attorney has fashioned with the state, has fashioned a limit where you have reduced your exposure for 2 violent first-degree felonies from life imprisonment to a maximum of 15 years in prison. And there's a big difference between 21-year-old and 17-year-olds who are in here. You have finished high school, you have been in the military. Thereafter, you made these poor choices. I just wished you could have listened to some of the role modeling earlier, because the genie's out of the bottle. You can't put the genie back when you commit a crime. You can't undo the wrong. You can't go to the victims and say, undo the trauma, please. Even in the worst occasion here, if you're sent to prison, you would be out well before you're 30 years of age, after essentially ruining the lives of at least two sets of people. Because I know what is told to me. They wake up with the horror of this experience their whole life, because they are not in control of their life. You were in control, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're all in this together. Live honestly, harm no one, give each person their rightful due. That's everything about law. And that's everything about religion, all wrapped up in those 3 concepts, which all 3 were shattered here by your actions. All right, I'm going to find in each of these cases you have pleaded guilty voluntarily. You were mentally competent to do so. You understood the consequences of pleading guilty. There was sufficient evidence supporting your guilty pleas from State's Exhibit 1 admitted in each of these cases. To support your guilty plea, to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, I now find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in each of these cases. And I am following the agreements. You are hereby sentenced to confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve a term of 15 years on each case, to run concurrently. The judgment shall show an affirmative finding that a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, was used in the commission of each of these crimes. Anything else?
No.
We are in recess on this case. No,
Oh, they just left.
there was, and a third case is pending. I have just dismissed that case.
Thank you.